What up, what up? This is Chris Dominguez. I am here, just got home from work, and I'm about to start doing some dishes. So, what do you guys got going on tonight or today, depending on where you guys are tuning in from? First up, I'm gonna make a solution, a little bleach solution, so that it's easier for me to scrub the dishes. So let's see what became of, yeah, all this shit's being used right now. So what I'm going to do, I'm gonna put some bleach. Okay. So we do a mixture of bleach and soap. This keeps our sponges hydrated, but also keeps them from stinking and getting all mildewy. So granted, you're supposed to probably switch out your sponges every 2 to 5 days, depending on how often you use your sponge. There you go, talking about fucking chores and stuff. I usually use one glove. This is my soap hand and my bleach hand, and then the other hand I will use for grip. Right? Now I'm adding the soap into the solution. I'm gonna get the hot water going. Probably takes like for me it takes like a minute for our water to get going. Okay, we got the hot running. Not exactly the most exciting thing to do, but I am here and it's time to lock in. Time to lock in. Okay, we've got our little solution working. This definitely makes cleaning a lot easier. So we're gonna make pasta. So right now I'm gonna focus on cleaning the main dishes that I need for pasta to get that going, right? And then I'll show you guys what we're cooking up today. Okay? First, I'm gonna clear one side of the dishes because it's pretty stacked up right now. And so today I woke up like at almost 8 o'clock. There goes that. Already. Yeah, so I started my day at around 8 o'clock, but I ended my night last night until like, I don't know, 3 o'clock or something again. And our girls have just been staying up super late, having all this energy, and then they freaking inevitably, because they're here at the house, they get to sleep in. That luxury because I got to get to work, so I'm running on like 4 to 5 hours of sleep. And I am feeling it. Yesterday I was only on like 3 hours of sleep, so today much better. I ended up getting to work, and I actually took a nap in my car before I clocked in today, and I slept really uncomfortably for, I don't know, like 30 extra minutes, and then I'm like, fuck, this is uncomfortable, so I got my ass into work, clocked in, and yeah, that's how I started my day. And I work at a company called Villa Hallmark Upholstery, also known as Contract Resources. And what we do over there is we've been in business for over 40 years. So since 1983, and we're actually coming up on our anniversary, another year of being in business. It's actually Halloween Day is that event. We're having a little party over at our facilities in Linwood, California. And yeah, we have a team. Let's see, right now, it's probably like 8 to 10 upholstery people. We have a couple of people doing cutting, sewing, and 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 people in the framing department, and 1 person that does our springing, and another person that does our foam work. So they make all of our cushions and stuff like that. So we probably have a team of about 20 to 25 people on a regular basis. And yeah, so it's really cool to work with this group of people. I've been working with Villa Hallmark for cumulatively over 5 years now, and I am a project manager at this time. So at first, I actually started off checking in fabrics, so that was like the only position that I was able to get when I first started at the company. And yeah, so I started checking in fabrics. And what does that entail? Well, what I was doing was when a customer would send in new fabric, okay, I would have to be the one to check it for any flaws, right? To make sure that it's up to commercial grade standards, that there's no deterioration inside of the fabric, right? And to make sure that there's no damage, tearing, peeling, and also to verify that the requested amount of fabric matches what the mill has sent. So if they send us like a 10-yard roll of fabric, you know, it was my job at the time to check those fabrics in and make sure that the yardage was correct. And I did that for a number of years. I was also in charge of keeping all the fabrics organized. And at the time, we had about 40 feet worth of tables, and underneath each table, we had all of our fabrics. And when I worked in commerce, I had them organized alphabetically, right, based on who our customers were. And that allowed me to, excuse me, that allowed me to kind of learn, one, who our customers were, and then it also just taught me a lot about the different fabrics that were coming in. You know, a lot of our customers chose and continue to choose like vinyls, velvets, and leather, and also a mixture of like woven fabrics and stuff like that. So that was a big part of my job when I first got hired. And then eventually there was somebody in the office that ended up getting a new job at LAX. So that opened up a position for me to start working in the office. What's up, baby? Hello. Yeah, I'm going live doing dishes. Go ahead. Dang, this is like freaking Mission Impossible.
Baby away.
Dun dun dun. Yeah, so that's kind of like how I started off at Villa Hallmark. And you know, from there I started taking on the role of a administrative assistant and customer service. So I would answer any inbound coming calls, right? And respond to customers. No lo puede ver. I'm covering the majority of the screen.
When I first came.
Yeah, you're good.
My hair was dyed and we will watch it.
You dyed it purple or what?
Blue.
Oh, blue. Nice. Okay. But yeah, anyway, I was talking to my wife, and on YouTube I'm kind of talking to myself, but this is going to be recorded, and I'm sure some people would scope it out. So anyway, I was working as an administrative assistant for multiple years, and I got to work with my dad, Juan Morales, and I got to work with my brother Matt. And then on top of that, I got to be trained and work directly with the other owner of the company at the time. And, you know, she had like over 30 years experience. You know, my dad does as well. So it was really cool to kind of learn from people that had so much experience in business, and not only business in general, but they kept the company going and profitable enough to be a debt-free company and in business for 30 years, 40 years.
To your face.
Yeah. So yeah, that was definitely a really big part of my upbringing and my experience with the Hallmark. And eventually I started doing everything for my boss, Roberta, right? I would pretty much do all of her work, and then she would check me, right? She would review the work that I was doing. And that's actually, you know, one of the topics that I wanted to discuss today is like the value of mentorship, right? So we all have a chance to be mentored by people in life, but we also have to be a good mentee, right? So in order for a good mentor and mentee relationship to work out, is the mentor has to have either experience or knowledge that the mentee actually wants to learn, okay? So there has to be an even exchange. Now, if the mentor is teaching the mentee something, the mentee has to be open enough to receive the information, and they actually have to be open to learning and applying what they are being taught. So if at any point, you know, the mentee isn't receiving the information properly, right? If they're not internalizing it and then applying it into the work environment or into a sport, right? Or whatever the avenue is that you're being mentored in, then you're unlikely to get the full benefit of that mentor and mentee relationship. So with that being said, I was mentored by both my dad, and I still am to this day, and by Roberta for multiple years, and I got to learn a lot about project management, quoting furniture projects, right, and ultimately rehashing a lot of stuff that I learned in other jobs about customer service, professionalism, communication. So, all of these skills that you get inside of the workplace, they're transferable, right? If you're willing and, smart enough to see your experience as valid and worthy of your time. There's some people that I've worked with before, and I've been, for over 10 to 15 years, I've been a manager, I've been a supervisor, and, there's people that don't actually have a good outlook or attitude on working, right? For whatever reason, it may be their upbringing, right? They may have gotten a negative view of hard work, working in general from parents, right? Most likely that's the biggest source of where people get their belief set is from their parents in their household. It could be siblings, older siblings. It could also be teachers at school, right? So there's a number of ways that we get our belief system, and we have to kind of understand, especially as adults, what information are we taking in, and what do you want to receive, and how do you want to reprogram yourself, right? Because each one of us comes with a certain amount of programming that we get from our upbringing, from society in general, especially from our parents, grandparents, people that are directly, being your guardian and stuff, people that you're with on a daily basis. And it makes me think of that quote that you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, right? Now, that works out in multiple ways. So it works out financially. So as an adult, once you start working, the 5 people you spend the most time with, you start to average out and earn within a few $1,000s of what they're earning. Okay, so that's pretty incredible that, through statistics, that's been pretty consistent across time frames, across history, and even in different countries. It's fairly true. And why is that happening? It's because we take on some of the beliefs that our friends, our family, our spouse, we take on some of their beliefs into our own psyche, right? And whether they have a good or bad outlook on working, right, entrepreneurship, or having a job in general, these things inevitably find their way into our conscious and subconscious mind. So we're constantly taking in this information, right? It could be from the news, friends, family, parents, etc. And as we're taking in this information, some of it's finding its way and taking root deep in our subconscious mind. And eventually, those thoughts become your repetitive thoughts. Okay? So, what can we do about some of these repetitive thoughts that we have that are not serving us anymore? Now, that's a great question. The way we reprogram ourselves, okay, is through affirmations, okay, through action. So those are a couple ways that you can reprogram your mind and also your attitude, right? If you don't have a good attitude about what you're pursuing in life, whether you're going to school, whether you're, going and working a 9-to-5 job, right? Whether you have a career, you have a business, a side hustle, okay, a family. All of these things are super important for deliveries right now. I'm actually just washing dishes, getting ready to cook some pasta. Okay, so as I'm continuing to wash these dishes, we are talking about mindset and how we get our beliefs, and also how we can reshape the way we think and the way we feel on a day-to-day basis. So first, you have to get clear about what it is you want in life. Okay, so what do you actually want in life? I would take some time every day, right, to find out what you want and to get clear about it, because clarity is power. Okay, clarity is power. So the more clear you are about what you want in life, the more you will understand if you're moving in that direction or you're moving away from that direction. So if you're not clear, if you don't have clear goals, objectives, if you don't have your dream written down somewhere, good luck, right? Because greatness rarely falls into your lap by mistake, okay? It usually falls into your lap because you're doing something, you're moving on a daily basis towards something. Your goals, your dreams, your objectives, your wants, your desires, even your needs. These are all important things to move towards. And it's good to differentiate, right? And have that clarity of knowing what you actually want. What do you really want to move towards, right? When it comes to your belief system. So for me, I've had to change up my goals on a yearly basis, and sometimes I'll change my goals every 6 months, every quarter. And one thing I've noticed this year, I have revised some of my goals, but I haven't got as clear as I have been before in my life. And perhaps that's because I'm struggling in life in different ways, right? I might be struggling financially within my businesses and, you know, quite frankly, struggling in the household, right? And, you know, not necessarily living up to even my own expectations. So that's a struggle, right? That's part of the daily struggle that we all have, is like you have this belief of who you might become one day, right? And, you know, when we fall short of that, it hurts, it's painful, it can be a little depressing even. So you just got to keep yourself in check and understand what you want. And the clarity will help you navigate your life like a GPS, okay? But without the clarity, there's no map, okay? There's no GPS that will recalibrate you. When you have a bad day, okay, you're not going to even know which way to go. You're going to go back to your vices, right? And that could be a number of things, right? And if you're a guy, it could be drugs, alcohol. Your vice could be playing video games. It could be porn. It could be sex and promiscuity. It could be, yeah, just doing any number of things that are counterproductive towards your goals and your dreams, right? And if you lack clarity, you're going to revert back to old habits, right? And some of these old habits don't serve you, right? You develop them as coping mechanisms in your life at different stages of your life, right? Depending on what you're going through and navigating at the time. Now, none of these things are bad in themselves, right? Alcohol isn't necessarily bad in moderation. You know, smoking weed isn't bad in moderation. Sex isn't bad in moderation. Okay, I would even say porn isn't bad in moderation. Okay, and that's going to be a hot take right there. But if you are addicted to any number of these things, any one of them could be debilitating towards being successful, for being productive in life. And if you're going through a stressful situation, you might revert back to some of these old coping mechanisms, right, that were established when you were a younger adult, a teenager, a preteen, a kid, or even a child, right? Some of these coping mechanisms are so deeply rooted that they date back all the way to when you were a toddler, a baby, or even in the womb. So how do we unpack that? How do we rewire all of that stuff if some of these roots go back to the womb, right? How can we possibly do that? It's through something known as the law of attraction, right? We are magnets, okay? We are magnets for our goals and our dreams, but we are also magnets to our repetitive thoughts and emotions that come from our thoughts. So if you have approximately 60,000 thoughts on a given day, 80% of those thoughts are repetitive thoughts. They're thoughts that you've had for the past 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, since you were a child. So these repetitive thoughts are programming you for a certain lifestyle. It's almost like you're a computer, right? Which is crazy, right, to think about, considering we might actually be little software programs, right, and not just humans, because of the way that we process things. So it's quite incredible that humans absorb information into their hardware, their body, right? This is the hardware, the mind, right? Not just the brain, right? The brain is also physical hardware, but the mind exists within the brain, right? And it's a mind trip. It's kind of crazy to think about, but your mind is your software. Okay, so I'm just clearing out one more dish right here. This is the pot that we're gonna need to boil our pasta today. So consider that you are a living, organic piece of hardware, and your body's pretty much baked in, right? You might be able to build your body, right? You might be able to work on your cardio, improve the hardware a little bit, right? You might be able to lift some weights and gain some muscle, right? Depending on what you want for you and your life and your body, right? That's your hardware. Your software is downloadable, editable, and even deletable programs that we as adults can now start to reprogram ourselves. Okay. As children, right, we only have so much control because we have our parents. We are most likely enrolled in school, and you have your teachers. You have the giant infrastructure that is here to turn you and I into a good little worker, a little yes man, right? So this is deeply ingrained into our society, right? And this is based on some Austrian, I believe, Austrian model of education that was designed specifically to make good factory workers during the Industrial Revolution, right? But we don't live in that era anymore. So the outdated school system is more meant to keep you a cog in the machine, right? To keep you in the matrix, per se, right? And if you want to make your way out of that, you have to get clear on what you actually want in life. And in this process, you want to think on multiple different scales of what you want, right? You want to think in short term, like what do you want today? What do you want your day to look like today, right? What do you want your life to look like within a week, a month, a quarter, a year? And lately it's kind of hard to plan out further than a year because things are changing so quickly. With AI and the internet just constantly reshaping the way we live our lives, right? Just 5 years ago, not everyone was getting food delivery. Now it's so ingrained that, people that are a 15-minute walk from the restaurant decide to wait 45 minutes for someone to make their food and for someone to pick it up and drop it off to them, right? People will pay for convenience, but at what cost, right? At what cost? Not just the cost of, the convenience, but also it's also, taking away a lot of our autonomy, right? Because we live in this very connected world where you can click a button and something will show up for you. We've lost touch with our own self-reliance, right? Before the Industrial Revolution, most families were able to live on their family farm, on their property, grow food for their family, all within their little agrarian society. And they genuinely did have support from neighbors, family, friends that were within their community, so that if one farmer has a bad crop, right, or a bad year, with their production of food, they had community, right? And that community is very much lacking nowadays because not everyone even knows who their next door neighbor is anymore, right? We've been connected through digital means, right? We're now more connected, quote unquote, than ever before. We're more connected than ever before digitally, but that digital connection has caused us to miss out on the real connection. Now, if you ever go anywhere and you're waiting in line, right, you're going to see most people are looking down at their phones, right? There's a human being to the left of them and to the right of them. And do they acknowledge them? Probably not. Most people have become so introverted nowadays because they are absorbed completely within their own phones, right? Into the technology. And don't get me wrong, this was happening before the phone ever emerged, right? It was happening before the phones. There were laptops, right? People were hopping on their laptop. They were getting on social media. Back in the day, it was MySpace, right? That was one of the earliest social media platforms, AOL, and, you know, instant messenger. So people have been utilizing and using technology, not just to communicate, but also to escape for a very long time. And before the laptops and tablets were here, we had desktop computers, right? So we always had a way to distract ourselves. And, you know, before the computers and internet were here, people were distracting themselves with cable TV. And some of the studies of that era, roughly 20 years ago plus, people were watching upwards of 6 to 7 hours of TV per day, right? And in 1 hour, there's approximately 5 to 7 commercial breaks, right? So especially in the US, we're constantly being bombarded by advertisers telling us what to fucking buy, right? Constantly reminding women that you need makeup to look beautiful, right? Not to say that, you know, women shouldn't see themselves as an artist and they're, you know, fully allowed to choose to beautify themselves. And the thing is, there's a lot of programming within our society, and, you know, people feel less than if they don't keep up with the Joneses. This is also like an old way of saying, like, keeping up with the Kardashians, keeping up with your neighbors. So if they get a new car, you may feel inclined to go get a new car, right? If they upgrade the house next door, they get a new paint job, a new roof, right? You want to get a new paint job or a new roof, right? People are very competitive inside of the society, and it doesn't always serve us to be so competitive with each other and to try to keep up with one another, right? When realistically, we don't all want the same things, and we shouldn't. We have the ability to vary in life with what we want. We have the ability to choose what we want our life to look like. And I'm going back to the law of attraction. I'm going back to reprogramming our own minds, right? We have to consider that our thoughts become who we are, right? So at any point, let's say you were in sports, right? For me, I was in wrestling when I was in high school, and I used to think about wrestling all the time, right? I would wrestle my brothers after a long day of wrestling, you know, weeks and weeks of practice. I would still have the energy and the time to think more, learn more, to go study different moves on YouTube to get extra cardio and conditioning in, you know, after hours, even to the point of skipping out on homework just to get more of a workout in, to hone my body in, because that was something I was absolutely obsessed with, right? It was something that I was good at, and it was also something that drove me to be better, right? I think sports cannot be dismissed, right? You can't dismiss what you learn by being in a team sport or an individual sport. So I highly recommend it. If you have any children, right? I have a 6-year-old daughter, and we enrolled her in basketball this past year, and she loved it. She made friends, she gained confidence, and a lot of skills and coordination as well. And it was her first year, you know. It was really cool to kind of see her progress throughout the season and get better over time. And it's really cool to see this in yourself as well. So give yourself the chance to challenge yourself and to get better over time. And honestly, physical attributes, you can start changing those things. You do have control over, you know, whether you're gaining or losing weight, right? You do have control over whether you're getting buff or you're getting fat. So you choose, right? It doesn't actually take too much time to start building a new habit. Now, what does that look like? It takes intention and clarity. And for me, about 15 minutes minimum per day to start building up a new habit. And then if you want to give yourself a fighting chance, some of the sweet spots that you have to get to start building up a new habit is at least 21 days to get into the beginning stages of building up a new habit, right? If it's working out, at the 21-day mark, you'll start to notice physical changes in your body. If you're going 3 to 4 times a week, right, to the gym, or pushing the ground, running outside, hiking, right? There's a number of ways that you can challenge your body. And, you know, with that being said, it's typically 3 weeks or 21 days where you start to notice some of those changes going on in your own body. So if you want to build up a new habit, you got to give yourself some time, and you have to also decide what bad habit you're going to eliminate and get rid of. Okay? So let's say you have a habit of playing video games. For me, that was one of my biggest vices, right? It was one of my biggest addictions as well. I loved, and I still do, I do enjoy and love video games and everything that they've taught me, right? I remember playing Pokemon red, blue version, yellow version, gold version. My brother's, I took my brother's silver version. So I played a number of, you know, Pokemon alone, not to mention Call of Duty and all these other great titles. I learned a lot, right? I had a lot of fun, you know, playing any number of these games that I mentioned, and a handful, if not 10 handfuls of other games, right? I started playing video games when I was definitely under 5 years old, right? Between Sega, what is it? Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, Sony PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So all these games, they genuinely can teach you a lot, but it's when they start to take up so much of your time, right? And you stop progressing in the real world and you start only spending time in that virtual world. For me, yeah, it was fun, but it was also very distracting and very debilitating when it came time to face myself in the mirror, right? When it came time to recount my days, and I was wondering, did I want this life of playing video games, you know, for 8 to 10 to 12 hours sometimes on my days off? Or was I gonna start trading those hours in for my actual goals and dreams? And for me, that was a huge paradigm shift to actually even start questioning this, right? And I physically had to sell my PlayStation 4 to my younger brother. One of his PS4s had just gone out, and I ended up selling my PlayStation 4 to him, and it was one of the best things that I could have done, right? Not just to get the extra cash that he sent me, but also to free up my time, right? To free up my time and my mindset to start to release the fog of, you know, cheap serotonin and dopamine that I was getting from playing video games and ranking up and, you know, over and over again on the same cycle, playing online, shooting people, talking shit, getting mad. There's just many, many wasted hours because at some point I had already got the full enjoyment of these games that I was playing, right? And that there's something like a bell curve, right? Now, I'm not going to get this perfect, but at the beginning of the curve, right? You're not very good at the game. So there's maybe not enough reward. There's not enough reward just yet. And then as you get better at the game, right, it becomes even more and more enjoyable, right? And eventually you get so good at the game, you get better than other people and it becomes easier and easier. And then you start to peak and eventually you start to go back down and it becomes less and less enjoyable, right? So there's a bell curve that goes up and down. And, you know, I think eventually, right, for me, I was just burned out by games and I was tired of yelling at, cussing out little freaking 10-year-olds that were way better than me at Call of Duty. And, you know, they had all summer to take off and I couldn't keep up with them anymore. So with that being said, for me, video games was one of my biggest vices. What's up, Mila?
Can you give her the candy to go to sleep?
Yeah.
I can't stand her.
All right. Will do.
Can you give me a hotspot on the glitter phone? Because Mom said.
You
And once you take your vitamins to sleep, okay? I'm not gonna eat.
All right, guys. This is about to be a next step. I'm gonna be rinsing, and then it's getting ready for cooking. And I'll let you know when I get started on that after I log off of here.